Tombs and the Yamato state. Pause, pause, pause. Himiko emerged onto the strife-ridden late Yayoi scene as a unifying queen, quelling years of fighting and initiating formal tributary relations with China. Scholars posit many theories regarding the advent of the tomb phase and the ascendancy of the Yamato Confederacy, 250 to 710, which was solidified sometime around Himiko's death. One compelling theory refers once again to climate change and the environment. Historians know from Chinese records that convulsive climate shifts of the late Yayoi and early tomb phase, especially around 194 BC AD, caused famine, cannibalism, and possibly widespread disillusionment with protective deities. Himiko could have been on the forefront of such a religious insurrection of native deities, casting away weapons and smashing bells associated with older deities, in favor of new deities associated with mirrors. At least this is how some of the archaeological evidence can be interpreted. Himiko and the new deities she spoke to through theurgy, her practice of sorcery and the way of demons, became a focal point. People erected tombs and worshipped mirrors and, we might speculate, anticipated the promise of better days. In Hyoko Prefecture, for example, archaeologists discovered a bell that had been shattered into 117 pieces. Somebody broke the mirror so carefully that archaeologists strongly suspect it was done on purpose, as a rejection of old, powerless deities associated with them. Himiko, we might again speculate, practiced her sorcery as a medium to communicate with new deities, the chief of which emerged as the sun goddess Amaterasu Omikami, the tutelary deity of the imperial household. Himiko also represented the emergence of a new military class, one forged by late Yayoi warfare. This military elite thrived on Yamato society's increasing agricultural surplus, which translated into breathtaking burial mounds in the shape of keyholes. Blacksmiths forged iron into better weaponry, much of which was followed its owner to their graves. Tomb phase settlements are more elaborate than Yayoi ones, often with larger wooden structures with moats or stone barricades. The groupings of houses and pit dwellings suggest that extended families cohabited together. In these households, women played a particularly important role in politics and production. Nearly half of the tombs excavated contained the remains of women, testimony to their access to resources, including iron weapons and political clout, perhaps deduced from forms of mirror sorcery. Tombs also contained gold jewelry, including earrings and belt buckles. Himiko also represented the birth of a new kind of king, one that became the centerpiece of the Yamato state and, as we all shall see, the earliest emperors of Japan. The Yamato state is best described as a kind of confederacy, in which the kings wielded control over vassal chiefdoms and were symbolic gift-giving and ceremonial homogeneity cemented relations between core and periphery. Scholars still debate the exact whereabouts of Yamato Center, but it was most likely in western Honshu, or less likely in northern Kyushu, perhaps with the militarized settlement of Yoshinogari as its capital. Keyhole-shaped tombs, the namesake of the tomb phase, provide conflicting evidence for the center of political power in Yamato. Less conflicting is the evidence they provide as to the manner in which Yamato kings manipulated burial rituals to assert control over the realm and, one presumes, the afterlife. One historian has labeled this the keyhole tomb hierarchy, one in which the largest, most elaborate tombs were built in Yamato's center, and smaller, less elaborate tombs were built on the periphery. The critical point, however, is that the keyhole tomb style was used fairly consistently across the archipelago, suggesting some degree of burial homogeneity asserted from the political core. These early tombs, such as the Makimuku Ishizuka tomb in Nara Prefecture provide testimony to the archipelag's social stratification, intensification of trade, and emergence of kings. Indeed, these tombs dramatized local authority and power within the Yamato Confederacy, and they strongly suggest that Nara Prefecture, more than northern Kyushu, emerged as Yamato's political core. A succession of Yamato kings strengthened the power of the center, and tombs were not the only means by which this was accomplished. Yuryaku, who ruled in the 5th century, wrote in a letter to the Chinese emperor that he was the Wa king and boasted of his martial exploits at home and on the Korean peninsula. From of old our forebears have clad themselves in armor and helmet and gone across the hills and waters, sparing no time for rest, he wrote. In the east they conquered 55 countries of hairy men, and in the west they brought to their knees 65 countries of various barbarians. Crossing the sea to the north, they subjugated 95 countries. Yamato kings and their ancestors had become military leaders. Inscriptions on swords, unearthed from tombs in central Japan, such as the Inariyama sword, reveal that the nature of Yuyaku's vassalage relationship with local chiefdoms. When the court of great king Wakatakeru was at Shiki, read this particular inscription, I aided him in ruling the realm and had his 100 times worth sword made to record the history of my service. Along with martial culture and vassalage, co-gendered rule in the Wa kingdom highlights the script for kingly behavior in Yamato. Not only did Queen Himiko rule with her brother, but later great kings such as Kitsuhiko and Kitsuhime, Suko and Prince Shotoku, and Yito and Tenmu all governed together. Presumably such co-rulers placed the Wa kingdom in geomantic conformity with competing yin-yang elements of the Chinese-inspired cosmos, which, as contact with East Asia grew, slowly crept into the Wa political mentality. It appears that women such as Himiko fulfilled sacred duties for the Wa realm. Increasing ties to East Asia translated into more male definitions of kingship, however. One compelling piece of evidence of the Wa kingdom's move towards male dominance is Suko's early 7th century deployment of Buddhism as a tool to combat patriarchy. Suko studied Buddhism, in particular such texts as True Lion's Roar of Queen Simala, which taught him of pious and brilliant Indian queen and explained that a bodhisattva could inhabit the body of a woman. She also oversaw the construction of the Hojoki Buddha 608, a 5-meter representation of Shakyamuni, the Indian prince who transformed into the Buddha. The text would have been appealing to a woman whose confederate rule, the sacred court she presided over, fell under the influence of Confucian values, which rearticulated notions of political and sacred power to be more patriarchal. Suku also erected the Wa kingdom's first capital at Oharida, 603, with an elaborate marketplace, highways to the hinterland, and port facilities. Simultaneous to Suko's exploration of Buddhist notions of female kingship, Prince Shotoku, with whom she co-ruled the Wa kingdom, imported Confucian notions of governance to strengthen the Yamato hold on power. It was this trend that Suko struggled with. Famously, Prince Shotoku drafted the 17-article constitution in 604, which stressed bureaucracy and Confucian principles. Importantly, it also legitimized Yamato authority with the moral authority inherent in nature. The sovereign is likened to heaven, explained Prince Shotoku's constitution, and his subjects are likened to earth. The constitution also stressed decorum and public good as commensurate with bureaucratic office. This document, combined with the later Taika reform 604 and Taiho Yoro codes 602 and 702 and 718, cemented the formation of the Ritsuryo state in Japan, which refers to a legal bureaucracy defined by penal and administrative codes. The 7th and 8th centuries witnessed the advent of this rule of administrative bureaucracies in the Wa Kingdom. Tenmu, who ruled in the mid-7th century, was likened to a deity, or a very god, as one Manyoshu, collection of 10,000 leaves, 8th century, poem describes. Another poem says he ruled as a god at the Kiyomihara Palace in Asuka, underscoring the slowly emerging divinity of Yamato rulers, a legacy that would persist into the 20th century. The Yamato kings transformed from mere controllers of the sacred into the sacred. Tenmu erected the grandest ceremonial center to date at Kiyomihara, which contained a garden of ministries, a throne hall, a reception hall, and an inner pavilion. In 689, Tenmu promulgated the Kiyomihara codes, which outlined oversight of monastic orders, judiciary, vassalist relations, and official promotions. Yito, who ruled at the end of the 7th century, was the first king to be referred to as Heavenly Sovereign, or Tenno, the name for the Japanese emperor. Yito transferred the ceremonial center to a new capital just west of Kiyomihara at Fujiwara, a city modeled after the great Chinese capital cities and one that conformed to philosophical principles in the classic Sauli, the rites of Zhao. The palace stood in the center of Fujiwara and was approached by the massive Red Bird Boulevard. In the new capital, such ceremonies as New Year celebrations, the annual rites for tasting new fruits, and other rituals could be performed in grand theatrical style. Then, in 669, the Wa Kingdom became known as Nihon, the present name for Japan. Conclusion. Pause. At the beginning of the 8th century, Japan and its heavenly sovereigns emerged from the engineered lands of a settled agricultural society, but they also developed from wrenching climate shifts, food shortages, interchieftain war and chaos, and even religious upheaval. Likewise, they evolved from sustained contact with East Asia and the titular legitimacy that accrued from contact with the Chinese court. They then adorned themselves with myths, bejeweled headgear, and other regalia. They surrounded themselves with armed guards and fortifications. Their followers buried them and their treasures in massive keyhole-shaped tombs, an extravagant display of wealth. Eventually, they called themselves heavenly sovereigns, and their realm, Nihon, originated from the sun. The early codes discussed in this chapter, such as Taika's equal field system, established state ownership of property and control of its transference, all of which led to the formation of the first state bureaucracies. In the next chapter, we will revisit those codes briefly, as well as cover the planning of the first elaborate courts and their commensurate court cultures, because they are critical to the foundation of the Nara, 710 to 794, and Heian, 794 to 1185 regimes.